know, if 20 years turns into 15 or 10, it's not as much about cost savings because we're not getting the same product, we're just getting a cheaper product. So, but you're confidently tonight saying that this is what you think is best. Why not tell us at any of the council meetings in May, or when we talked about it on June 1st, I think you made a comment that Hennessey agreed with it. So why not just tell us in May or tell us on June 1st that this is, you're adamant that this is the way that we should be going?
So let me answer the question about Hennessey agreeing with it. Up until just recently, I didn't realize that they were that adamantly against it, especially when we met with the contractor. We had multiple discussions on this. Not once did they question me and say, you know what, we would like to take this to the mayor's office, council, because this is our design, this is what we believe in. That was never said. So I have no other reason not to believe that they would not agree with it. The contractor was there. The contractor agreed with it. The contractor has never put this concrete, this crack relief layer down.
The contractor's going to say, I'm going to do whatever you want me to do, it's just as long as you make up for the work that I'm going to lose because of the savings. And that's just my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of things. One, I just want to point out the HMA process that was performed out here back in, I think it was done somewhere 06, 07, 08. That process, which we did not touch the concrete at all, we just, like Mr. Lyons has indicated, we essentially, it was a mill and fill, we heated it up and we laid new asphalt. No base work was done whatsoever. And that lasted 13 to 14 years with no base work. So to suggest that a 3.5 inch or 4 inch HMA overlay won't realize 15 years with some form of general maintenance, I just think is very misleading. So when Mr. Lyons came to me and said, well, I actually, as I indicated last night, I asked him to go out and look at why we had the big heavy fall off on the transition. And when he looked at it, he said, well, you know, there's some specs in there and I believe we can save some money by doing this. And so when I realized that it was this reflective crack layer, or whatever it's referred to as, I wanted to reach out to see who has had performed this process. So initially we looked at the city of Taylor roads and we've never done it. I know recently Craig has reached out to various communities and we have not found anybody that's done it. We had Ed from Al's Asphalt here last night and he's never done it. What I don't know the answer to, because I failed to ask, I don't know if Hennessey's ever done it, and I'd like to know that answer because I'd like to really understand the real life expectancy or the real life difference and not the anticipated life difference. So I'd like to know if they've ever spec'd this in another community in a local road and where that community is, because I'd like to reach out to them and find out just what they've done and what they've experienced. But what was done out here is the 3.5 inch overlay. What is done between Telegraph and Beach Daily is the 3.5 inch overlay. Essentially every road in the city that we've done has all been the same spec. So we made the decision collectively to move back to the original spec and put together a maintenance program that would allow the roads to all be collectively realize the same life. We have never done this before in the city of Taylor. We haven't found a community that has done it. I'm sure that they said that it's been in process and being evaluated since 1999. We just haven't been able to locate anybody that's done it.
But Mayor, when this entire process started, you know, Keith Bach was here. You guys probably went and said, hey, I want a 20-year lifespan out of this. You, Hennessey, Keith Bach, all get together, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just speculating, and said, okay, this is what we want. Hennessey went out and did that. And to the best of their ability, they said, hey, we think this can get you 20 years. And then, after that, Keith Bach leaves, Mr. Lyons come in, everything changed. And I just don't understand why there wasn't it doesn't seem like, because if you're asking now if Hennessey has never done that or you'd like to know, why didn't you call him and ask him?
Mr. Chairman, I never took part in a conversation to implement a process for the reflective crack relief. I've never heard of even this process until just recently. I'm not familiar with it, and I don't know what conversation Keith had. I can't speak for Keith, and I don't want to. but I can tell you that that's not how it happened. When we hired Hennessey to do the core sampling, what we were trying to determine is the condition of the base underneath the asphalt. My expectation is they were going to design a road that was similar to what we've designed out here, so we would have consistency through the city of Taylor. Now, if in fact they've had that conversation with Keith, that may have taken place. I wasn't part of the conversation though.
Well, the thing we voted on specifically said a 20-year lifespan.
And
that's what we voted on.
And you will realize a 20-year life expectancy out of what's being produced.
Well, that's speculation. I mean, they both are technically, but I just...
With proper maintenance, that is the spec that most communities have used historically for all of their projects.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Bizarre.
We'll go back to Pardee Road. I watched the November 17th meeting a couple of times where we voted on the bonding and, you know, made some very specific notes about what time people said what. And at that time, we were describing Pardee Road as an experimental improvement that didn't work, that quickly began to fail, and that the city got screwed because the company went out of business. Now we're talking that this was some great project that lasted a lifetime. So maybe I got my projects confused, but at that point, Mr. Cruz had done a very detailed presentation to tell us what we were paying for. I think Councilman Winton asked specifically about materials. And the notes that I made that night and then rewatching the meeting, these 2 inches of this, 2 inches of that, 1.5 was clearly agreed upon, and we kept referring to Hennessey, gee, Mayor, what are we going to do about this? I don't know. I'm going to defer to the experts. So I agree. Cameras are going to be the cops. IT is going to be Sneehall. So I was deferring to the experts, and I was sold that this 2, 2, and 1.5 is going to get me my 20 years. So I think we've known all along what the materials were going to be. I'll assume that Bach did agree to it, or we probably wouldn't have gone out for bonding, or we would have asked them to redesign the project. Fair enough that I don't want to speak for you, but if you didn't specifically sign off on the material and you relied on Bach, that's fine. But at that meeting, we very specifically talked about 5.5 inches, and we very specifically talked about this particular layer, and that was sort of the key cog in making sure we don't have another failed experiment like the last time we tried to do Pardee. So if we disagree with that, that's fine. You didn't tell me that in May when you had the meeting with Hennessey and Ajax. You didn't bring it up at either of the council meetings, and you didn't bring it up in June when he asked you if you agreed with Hennessey. So I feel a little bit better about the confidence level if you would have came out swinging May 4th and said, hey, just so you guys know, I signed a change order on the biggest contract you guys have approved in the last 5 years. That might have been interesting to me, and I would have said what I'm saying now. Hell, I trusted Hennessey. I don't know my asphalt, but it would have been a lot, I guess, easier to digest if it didn't take a resident asking one of us about something like this for us to even have the discussion. I'm not sure we'd know about this if we didn't bring it up on June 1st. And that just troubles me, that's all.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman's question about the meeting in November, when we had the meeting with Hennessey, I haven't watched the video, but I'll trust what you're saying is accurate. But what wasn't disclosed at that point in time, that this process is new, that this process has never been done locally, at least that we can find, and that's why I want to allow them the opportunity to respond to if it has been done. But at that point in time, I don't think it was clearly identified that that this process was a specification that the city of Taylor's ever used. And even before my time, I don't know all the different processes. I mean, there are processes of concrete and asphalt that I don't know what the specs are, so I'm not sure if this was something that we did before and we liked it and we're going back to it, or if this was a process, as we now know, that's never been used in the city of Taylor.